Hey everybody, welcome to Into the Necrosphere number 29. My name is Jackie Smith, your host as always, and on this episode I'm going to be joined by Jared Bridgeman, who's the vocalist and bassist of the beastly Earthrot out of Perth in Western Australia. They've just put out an absolutely fantastic record on Season of Mist called Tides of Obscurity. I think I reviewed it back on episode number 25. And if you have not heard it yet, then in the words of Flavor Flav, I tried to help you all I can. Now I can't do nothing for you, man. On a serious note, though, definitely get hold of it. If you like your death metal with a touch of black, or your black metal with a touch of death, I think Tides of Obscurity delivers an absolute masterclass in how to blend the two genres together. And Jared, as expected, was an absolute pleasure to have on the show. Great guy. We spoke a lot about the band's signing to Season of Mist. We spoke about the scene in Western Australia and just his career in music generally. So there was a very fun conversation coming up in just a couple of minutes. After that, I will also be talking about some new music. So today we're going to be reviewing the new Omega Infinity, as well as the new EP by Stellar Master Elite. And I have been joking on social media that Stellar Master Elite are the Into the Necrosphere house band. I hope nobody saw that as being derogatory. I can tell you right now that if it were not for Marco and Stellar Master Elite, there's a very good chance the show probably wouldn't ever have existed in the first place. I have told this story before, but for those of you guys that don't know, so Into the Necrosphere basically started off as something I was going to do on a Facebook page called the Metalhead Pub TV. That's run by a friend of mine named Sean. And it was him who actually got me introduced to Marco. Marco very patiently sat through probably about 8 or 9 false starts as far as us actually doing our first interview is concerned. And then finally, we did it. I uploaded it to YouTube. Enough people liked it to where I decided to turn it into a podcast. And by the way, if you are on Facebook and you do want to check out Metalhead Pub TV, it's well worth doing. Sean is particularly keen on thrash and I guess more traditional metal, so he talks a lot to local UK bands, and a guy who's just so unbelievably passionate about the metal scene. He's a fun dude to listen to, and the Metalhead Pub is actually a very cool kind of traditional English pub with a metal theme that he built in his backyard. So yeah, it looks fucking cool, and it's a great Facebook page and one well worth supporting. But anyway, back to the point at hand. So yeah, like I said, if it were not for Marco and Stellar Master Elite, I don't think Into the Necrosphere would have existed. And obviously, Marco was very kindly allowed me to use Null as the intro song. So that is coming up just after my interview with Jared, and then also if I'm in a good mood, I might do some news reading. Seems like some of you guys have been enjoying my ranting and raving about various bits of metal news. So yeah, we'll open up maybe Blabbermouth, Metal Storm, and potentially Invisible Oranges, and see where the conversation takes us. I also just wanted to say thank you very much to all of you who have been contacting me on social media recently. I seem to have had a real influx of traffic in the last 2 weeks or so, and a lot of people have been sending me messages, hitting me up, saying that they enjoy the show and they appreciate what I do. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I hugely appreciate you guys taking the time to do that. It absolutely makes my day. I love that people are enjoying the show. I will fully concede that it's probably not for everybody, whether you're into metal or not. But if you do like it and you do support the show, thank you very much. And a reminder to all of you guys that haven't done so yet, you can follow Into the Necrosphere at Into the Necrosphere on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and wherever else it is that you choose to listen to podcasts. That is the intro done and dusted. So without further ado, let us welcome to Into the Necrosphere, Jared Bridgeman of Earthrot. I'm going to start with the obvious question. You are undoubtedly, like the rest of us, in lockdown at the moment.
Yes.
But you moved, but you moved from Perth to Melbourne not too long ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Just over a year ago, I moved. Yeah. So now myself and Daniel live in Melbourne, and Colin and Tom live in Perth.
Yeah. And you moved away from Perth because you wanted to get away from all the South Africans, or?
No, just to get more into music industry. And Melbourne's a really big city for live music, so it just made sense. If I wanted to do more of it, I should go where there is more of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would definitely say most of the everyone I went to school with back in, I live in London now, but everyone I went to school with back in South Africa who fucked off to Australia, they're all living in Perth.
Yep, that's where they go.
Yeah, there's one girl there that I might go look up one if my girlfriend ever leaves me over here. But anyway, so you wanted to get closer to the music industry, but I want to, as far as the lockdown and stuff like that is concerned, how is that affecting you? Are you guys kind of under strict curfew and stuff as well?
As of last night, we're under much stricter curfew. So right now, there's a list of things that you're allowed to leave home for. And for the most part, it's shopping for essentials, doctors, work if you're still working, and anything else. Each state has a different fine.
Yeah.
Or being caught out not, doing something inappropriate. And here, I think it's about $1,700 per person if you're caught doing something you shouldn't be doing. In Queensland, it's as much as $11,000.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
38 pounds over here, mate. So people don't give a fuck. They just do what they want.
Yeah.
But I mean, how, do they have roving bands of police
I haven't seen anything
on the streets?
I live out in the suburbs, so I haven't really seen anything. Yeah. I'm assuming in the CBD, like right in the middle of the city, they'll have some police, but Australian cities are so spread out. It's so far that they couldn't police everywhere to really do that. It's more of a, hey, we can give you a fine and we're going to make it a big one so you actually listen.
Yeah. No, over here, they I don't know how many they eventually got out, but there was a call that went out for retired policemen to get back into service after in order to kind of enforce the curfew. And apparently a couple of them have been pretty slap happy, and they've gone to convenience store owners, given them shit about selling Easter eggs, saying it's not essential items, and they're putting up roadblocks everywhere. So it's like it's becoming like 12 Monkeys kind of shit over here.
It is a bit like that, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I mean, my fear is we never get out from under this, because I always worry whenever the government puts something in place, it's very rare that they actually take it away. So if you're if they start to sort of put these restrictions on you, there's a very good chance that they might just go, well, we're going to keep that in place indefinitely now, and you can go and see your friends from 8 till 10 at night, but you have to be back in the house, or it's an $11,000 fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anywho, on to more positive things. Sure. You guys brought out Black Tides of Obscurity about a month ago.
Yeah.
Some would say it triggered the lockdown and the isolation measures that the countries took. But I mean, I would say this is one of those records of 2020 that is, and there's not many of them, but has just been uniformly well received from what I can tell. I mean, I remember hearing Jamie Jaster talking about it. I have not read a single bad review. How do you guys feel about the response to it so far? I mean, is it what you expected? Has it sort of surpassed your expectations?
I don't think we really had any expectations. Like, this is our first label release album with this behind us. We always knew it would reach people that we'd never reached before. And so that would either be fantastic and there'd be people that will go, oh, great, this is something different, something I haven't heard, or it just fits into what I want to listen to. But we didn't really see, like, up until it was released, where it would go.
Yeah.
Being such a DIY band, we're used to sending our own emails and trying to push it to people and be like, have a listen, have a review, do this, let's have a chat about it. And we have a label to do that for us now. So anyone that's grabbed it, listened to it, posted a review is totally unexpected to us. So the whole thing was just wide open as far as we were concerned.
Yeah. And I remember hearing, I heard the Mind Killer single and I was like, fuck, this is really good. I'm really, really looking forward to the rest of the album. And I have to say, Mind Killer for me, it's kind of a good taster because it piques your interest, but it's really sort of scratching the tip of the iceberg of what's on the record. And I think there's just so many fucking highlights on this album. But I wanted to ask you, I know you guys started recording this way back in 2018. Had this Season of Mist deal already been, was the ink already dry on that? Or, okay, so did you guys shop the record around?
We shopped the record, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it was probably mixed and mastered early 2019. And from there it was shop it to a few labels, see who's interested, talk to them. And I think by the time we actually signed would have been around July last year. So just over 6 months from deal being inked to actually being released. Which is pretty standard, I think, from.
And you went directly to Season of Mist, or did they kind of hear about you guys on the grapevine?
I think this one might have been, it came up in a conversation with our producer. Because they're always having conversations, like, what are you working on now? And they've always got a list of bands they're working on. Our producer has done other bands on Season of Mist before. So I think they were talking about one of his other bands, and he just went, well, I've got this as well. Have a listen, see what you think. And I went from there. Yeah.
Were you guys surprised when they reached out to you?
No, we'd been in contact on our previous releases as well. So we knew we'd get them to have a listen, and we knew they'd listen and get back to us, whether it was a positive or a negative, but they're pretty good with getting back to bands. So we were I was quietly hoping that this time they'd come back and go, yeah, let's do it.
I have to say, and I've mentioned this on quite a few episodes before, and people will probably start thinking that I'm sponsored by Season of Mist just purely because of how many bands from there I either interview or I talk about. But they are on an absolute tear at the moment as far as signing up just fucking top-notch talent. I mean, there's you guys, Halfro, Omega Infinity. They've signed Tombs. It's kind of one great band after the next. And they seem to really have their heads together around quality control. But then equally kind of, delving into countries that aren't necessarily in the eye line of a label like Nuclear Blast. I mean, I don't know if Nuclear Blast have any Australian bands on their label, except for Mortification.
They might have one or two, yeah.
Yeah, they had Mortification back in the old days. That was like, if you grew up in South Africa, all the fucking morons who wanted to listen to metal but were too terrified to listen to Deicide because it was satanic, they'd be like, oh, you should check out this Scrolls of the Megaloth album, it's so brutal. And then you hear it, it's like, I'm sorry, mate. This is I don't hear them singing about Satan, so therefore this can't be any good.
That's the rule,
pretty much.
Yeah.
But what has it been like working with Season of Mist? I mean, are they in terms of the label support they've given you guys, the push you've had? How has this differed from what you guys were doing before?
I think for the most part, they come to us with ideas and with. Like some of the stuff you do is just like given. They're like, you're going to do some music videos. Cool. You're going to do some promo shoots. It's in the contract, but they give us free reign to do whatever we want with it. And then we are just kind of throwing at them and going, here's the crazy idea we came up with. Are you all happy with that? And they've all gone, yeah, brilliant. Love it each time. They're super supportive of us just like creatively doing whatever it is that we feel like doing, which is, it's one of those things I think you used to hear about, like labels coming in and being like, no, like you can't do this with a release, or it's got to look like that, and like being really controlling. But it's the exact opposite. I don't think we've had any even questions about anything creative that we've done visually or musically, which is all super positive. So it's nice to have a label that just 100% back whatever we want to do.
Yeah. And did they give any input on stuff like, what the initial single would be like? Obviously when you guys put out Mind Killer before the record came out, did they give you guys a view on what they thought would be the lead single, or what would it kind of attract people's attention?
They asked us what we thought we'd put as the first single, and as the second, and we kind of planned out three of them and said, I think maybe we'll release these ones as singles. The first one, Dread Rebirth, just made sense. We'd already actually started on the video, I think, before we'd signed the deal. So we'd already started work on it and had a rough idea of what we wanted to do. As for the other singles, they just went, yeah, pick the singles that you're going to do. And I actually had trouble. I'm going, well, which songs do you think we should do? Let's have your perspective on it. And they went, well, let's hear what you want to do first and see if they kind of align. And Mind Killer actually wasn't one of those songs that we were intending on releasing as a single or doing a video for. Yeah, we were playing it live purely because I think we would just reach that point where we're like, well, let's start learning songs off the new album and getting them out there live and playing something fresh for ourselves. And we played it live and had a friend film it just purely by chance at a show. And we were going to do like an animated video for the single we were supposed to release. And the guy that was going to do all the video work for us just stopped replying, just completely went off the map, non-responsive. And we were hanging in the lurch for a second video clip. And then overnight, our friend Nick, NJV Media, just slapped that video together out of live footage, just went, there you go, there's a new music video. So 2 days out from the single release, we had to get the label to change all of the releases on Spotify and all the streaming so that the new Mind Killer would be the single that came out second.
Yeah. Dread Rebirth definitely sticks out to me as kind of, it's one of the first songs that catches your attention on the record when you're listening to it for the first time. And it's got that sort of, I wouldn't say classic beat, but like this boogie beat right at the start. And it's almost kind of like, I know there's a lot of the reviews that I read where they compare you guys to Entombed, which I think is a little misplaced. But I get why. But on that particular song, there is definitely, that opening beat or that opening riff kind of reminds me of something off of Clandestine, but brought into 2020. Anyway, that's just a side note. But the actual recording of the album, you mentioned you guys worked with the producer, but you guys have been doing a lot of. You mentioned being very DIY prior to this this release coming out. Did you guys record in your own studios? How does that process work? And I guess how is it going to work now that you guys are living in different cities?
Well, we kind of already were, because for the last 4 years or so, 3 of us have lived in Perth and our drummers lived over here in Melbourne. So we already had to do everything separately anyway. So to record drums for this one, myself and Tom flew over to record drums with Daniel and Troy McCosker at Pony Music in Melbourne. So we recorded drums up first and then flew back to Perth. And then we did guitar, bass, and vocals just in bedroom studios, mine and Colin's houses, until it was done. Just got it all done. And then a day in another studio in Perth to reamp guitar tones, and that was the end of it.
Yeah. I definitely, you mentioned vocals. One, I love the variety of the vocals on this album. Especially kind of the old school snarl that you sort of mix in with the growls. You know what I'm talking about. Almost, it sounds a little bit like Patrick from Pestilence, but just fucking brilliant. One thing that seems to throw people off is the last track, which is almost kind of like a Tom Waits kind of tune.
Yeah,
I was just thinking now you guys should have released that as a single. We're taking a different track and then. But fucking cool song and a really, really cool way, I think, to round out the album. But are you into that side of things, Tom Waits, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds? Because I can hear,
absolutely,
I can hear pretty stark references to that on that tune.
Oh, definitely, absolutely, yeah. That's a bunch of stuff. So myself and Tom, the founding guitarist, we were playing in the school swing band when we were in high school together.
Really?
Yeah, so playing, doing a bit of blues and a bit of jazz and stuff. It's always been something we've done. And we were just writing the song, I think because I started doing that like voicey kind of throaty sound that I did in Out in the Cold. And we thought, it just sounds right over some dirty Southern like Crossroads blues. So let's write something and chuck it on the album. That was the only song that we thought maybe the label would go, come on guys, like you can't put this on your album. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're a heavy metal band. Let's put heavy metal songs on a record. And we sent it. And they went, this is brilliant. Let's do it. It was so stoked.
Yeah. No, I as I said, I think it's a great way to finish off the album. And I think it's interesting how many people that are into metal are into that kind of music as well. And weirdly enough, especially people that are into black and death metal. I was talking to Mike from Tombs the other night, and we were talking about. The first time I met Morgan from Marduk, and I was, just asking him at the end, like, what kind of music are you into at the moment? And he was like Woven Hand and 16 Horsepower, and I'd never heard of them before. And he turned me on to them. But it's you have so many people as they get older and they're into this music, they seem to sort of gravitate towards the bluesy side of things as well.
I think blues and metal definitely goes hand in hand as well. Like lyrically, the really dark blues is the only thing that's on par with black metal.
Yeah.
Like selling your soul to the devil is like it's decades ago, it's a century ago idea, but it's the same concept really. It's a similar concept. At least the like world or realm of black metal lyrics. So it kind of makes sense that people kind of go for both. That same somber, like dark music vibes. So delivered in a different way.
Yeah. No, for sure. You mentioned that you guys, or some of you guys, met when you were playing in the swing band when you were in school. I've always been curious because I've never visited Australia, and I will do in the next couple of years because I've ironically got a friend who's moving over there again as well, and one of my best mates. So we've sort of said we'll try and meet up every year around the time of the Melbourne Hi-Fi show, but. The Australian metal scene has always struck me as having some similarities to the South African scene in that the bands kind of have almost created that because you get less touring bands there and less international acts there. You sort of created your own scene, and you kind of almost. I guess you entertain yourselves in a way, and that also means that Australian bands tend to have a very unique sound and a very unique style. But I was curious, and I will say this too, and I don't want to sound like I'm hating on South Africa, but you guys just do it right versus 99% of South African bands sounding like dog shit. that's beside the point. But I wanted to know, like, how many, how big is the scene over there? How many people, for example, like, does the Australian scene show a lot of support for its own?
It can. There's still a bit of division between subgenres over here.
Yeah.
So some subgenres will like ride highs and lows bigger than others. I think a lot of that depends. Like if there's a lot of touring Australian black metal bands that are actually doing a lot, then black metal will kind of just like rise up a bit. You need a good balance of established bands that have been around doing it for a decade or more, and then young bands kind of rising up and doing it as well. Melbourne in particular has a lot of thrash metal bands, and I'm not really used to that. In Perth, there's one or two, and that's it. And in Melbourne, there are 10, there's dozens of thrash metal bands here. And so because of that, the thrash shows kind of do okay. They have like a bit of support within their scene. And
Yeah. I was very surprised actually by the resurgence of thrash. I mean, I don't know why, but a band like Power Trip, for me, as much as I think they're fucking excellent, they never struck me as a band when I heard their first record a couple of years ago that would break out and become as big as they have. I kind of always felt like maybe people would gravitate towards or stick to maybe an evolution of the metalcore sound, which I don't like, but they would kind of go towards that. But it's been very interesting for me, like how much people have started embracing old school again, and death metal seems to be going that way as well. The only genre that doesn't seem to be stagnant is black metal. I don't think black metal really sort of looks at the past as much maybe as death metal or thrash.
I think that's funny because people seem to think that black metal is stuck in the 90s, and it really isn't. I don't know at all. I think especially at the moment, there's been kind of like newer waves of like even like Icelandic black metal that really has its own thing that's totally separate to any of the other black metal scenes. But it kind of still has a reputation for being like early mid 90s black metal.
I know, and I've always, I think the only thing that I would say I've noticed, and it's not a bad thing, but what I have started noticing is that countries tend to they seem to kind of have a very distinct style and a distinct sound. Like French black metal bands, you can kind of hear there's that Deathspell Omega, Aosoth vibe, lots of discordance. I feel like some other countries are sort of co-opting that. Weirdly, I think a lot of death metal bands have started picking up on that discordance as well, and they're trying to using it. The US has this almost sort of southern fried sound to their black metal. So, bands like Cobalt and, I'm trying to think of another example now. We actually spoke about one not too long ago, but it's early morning here. So I'm also 40, so I can't remember names. But then as you say, Icelandic black metal really, really fast. And then, as I said, Australia, what I've always loved about Australian metal generally, and it was an Australian band that got me into metal, AC/DC, and there's been sort of this steady trickle of great bands coming out of Australia. The Berserker, the Amenta. I was a fucking enormous fan of Alchemist back in the day. I remember seeing Alchemist play here once, and I was like, if these guys did not live in Australia, they would have the potential to be as big as Metallica. Like if you saw them play, you immediately thought these guys are way too big for the tiny, shitty little venues that they're playing in. But sorry, what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way is I think black metal has embraced this sort of spirit of creative freedom to me, where a lot of the bands just seem to have decided that anything I want to put in here, I'll put in here because I'm a black metal band and I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And I think it's made the genre that much better, and that's what flies in the face of this perception that the genre is stagnant. Because for me, it most definitely is not. I don't think there's a single genre that's producing as many great new bands as the black metal genre.
Sure, I would agree with that as well. There's a lot of, I think the majority of what I listen to personally is probably subgenres of black metal at the moment.
Yeah. So what are you listening to at the moment?
I make an effort to grab my phone, have a look at a couple. Every year now I make a list on Spotify of just everything that I find that's heavy that comes out. Like regardless.
I do exactly the same thing. So I have on so I'll have on Qobuz, I'll have like a 2018, 2019, 2020 playlist, and anything good that comes out. Like it's like new music Friday, and it's become a ritual with me. I wake up at about 6 on a Friday morning, and then I start going through all the new releases. Anything that sounds remotely interesting gets dropped onto the 2020 playlist, and I'll go back to that later.
Yeah, I don't even do that. If it's heavy, I drop it on the playlist. That's it. That's my only criteria for this at the moment. But there's been a lot of really good stuff already this year. Kind of albums that I was anticipating and like really waiting for. Dark Fortress, their new album. Spark Crown, their new album's incredible.
Yeah, so I liked that album, but I felt like I felt like the album was actually better when they moved away from the kind of black and death metal thing that they've been doing all of their career. I think that one kind of almost ballad that they did, I think that's the best song on the album.
Yeah, it's a much more diverse album, and I think that really works. It makes the black and death metal stuff much more effective because they're doing so much more with it. But I love that album. At the moment, I must admit, a lot of my list here are Season of Mist bands now, because I'm just a little more in touch with them at the moment, and I'm seeing every single thing that they post. But there's so much stuff that's come out that I love from them. I'm really looking forward to the new Naglfar, though.
Yeah. See, that's the one country where I'm not as big of a fan of their scene as I am of like Poland or France or I mean, you know, even Australia is Sweden. I think the Swedish I think a lot of the Swedish bands, it sounds to me like, maybe it's because I don't like Iron Maiden. It's like Iron Maiden riffs that are tremolo-backed and played over blast beats and with screaming included. Like, I've never been a big fan of Watain. I've never been a big fan of Dissection. I've never been a big fan of Naglfar. There's just something, I don't know, there's like some of the menace that I like in black metal is missing from those bands to me.
Interesting.
And I know I'm wrong, because I know it's pure perception, yeah. But like, if I listen to, let's take a great Swedish band, Funeral Mist, and I listen to Naglfar, it's not the same thing to me. Like, Funeral Mist sounds like it, if I play to an average person, they would be fucking terrified and it would need psychiatric help. If you play Naglfar to somebody, it's like okay, that sounds a little bit like Iron Maiden. You know, I just don't like the screaming.
That's curious. I'm going to go back and listen and see if I can pick the same Iron Maiden ideas that you're hearing in it. Because I've never heard anyone say that before about those kind of bands.
I think my Iron Maiden sensitivity is probably a little higher than most. That's why.
Iron Maiden sensitivity, sure.
Yeah.
I just think they're really, really creative. The vocal patterns, I find them like, I'll have a Naglfar song stuck in my head for a week, which is quite rare for black metal as well, because it's typical that does that. But if it's stuck in my head, I'll just keep going back to it. And there's something about them that draws me in every single time.
You know what though? I might actually go back and give Naglfar a listen based on what you just said there, because that's been a big thing for me. And again, it's something I've spoken about quite a lot. I fucking hate monotonous vocal lines, and you get that especially in death metal, but you get it in black metal to a point as well, where kind of the vocal line is just the same on every single song, no matter how fast or how slow it is. Like, it sounds like a fucking typewriter. It's typewriter vocal lines, like bum, 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 bum. It's like, I'll definitely compliment you on that. You have got it down pat to where on this record, I think in some songs the vocal line is almost the hook. Which in a weird way, it reminds me a little bit of like, old early 90s hip hop where, it was a bass line and drums and a sample and the vocals were what hooked you in. For me, like if I listen to any of the early Deicide albums, I know Glenn listens to hip hop, and I've always wondered, I've never gotten to ask him directly, but I've always wondered whether his vocals and his vocal lines and the way he phrases and puts rhythm in his voice, whether consciously or subconsciously a hip hop influence in that. But kind of where does your, how do you come up with your vocal lines? Because I would imagine music gets written first and then you start putting your voice over it.
So our main thing is we'll go music first, and then I'll record like a single take or maybe two takes of just sounds, like just the ideas, rough patterns, rough sounds, highs and lows, textures of voice. And then we order the songs like they're going on the album, and then I'll write lyrics and try and match my lyrics to the patterns and then tweak it from there, and then that's what will become the final thing. Because I think every release we've done has been some sort of concept and it's been chronological. So the first song needs to be the first one that I write lyrically. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense in the end.
I was going to ask you about that because as a rule, I've generally never been the biggest fan of concept albums, but part of it is because I don't like the way the lyrics are often written on concept records, where it's kind of the vernacular is extremely direct and prescriptive. I tend to like lyrics that are quite abstract, and lyrics that I being a 14-year-old, I remember, sitting there poring over lyrics on Domination, and you'll see one meaning in it, and then a month later you'll interpret it completely differently. I checked out the lyrics to Mind Killer, and it was interesting that there's a concept to it, but the lyrics are written in quite an abstract fashion. Like it's something that, again, you could probably interpret and reinterpret in many different ways, depending on your mood at the time.
That's definitely something that was intentional, like much more specifically on this release, because of the way the concept arc goes. The point is for it to not be particularly clear and to be a little open and, sometimes twisted and imperceivable, because that's essentially how the tail end of the album wraps up lyrically and musically.
Yeah. Let's talk about the concept in a second. I'm just having a gander at my 2020 list. So I've got Dark Fortress on here as well. Tombs, which I'm a fucking enormous fan of.
Album today.
I'll tell you what, I was super surprised by the new Sepultura.
Yeah.
I mean, I quite like Derek Green anyway, and I think as a frontman, I have more time for him than I have for Max Cavalera. I just think he looks cooler on stage. He muscled up, badass looking guy versus a fucking midget hobo. And then, a band I got on the same weekend as you guys brought your record out, Freda Hammer out of Norway.
Oh, cool.
If you've not checked them out yet, they kind of like imagine if Red Harvest and Zyklon had a love child, they would sound a bit like that. Blaze of Perdition, their new album's fucking cool. The new Panzerfaust single sounds absolutely nuts. I cannot wait for the rest of that album. The new Ruins of Beverast single is fucking awesome as well. And then your countrymen, Omega Infinity, they just brought out an album on Season of Mist, which is the absolute bee's knees.
Really been enjoying the singles, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a band who are just about to bring out a split on Van Records called, I think they're called Sladier. They brought out another album in 2013 called Deluge, which I fucking loved. But this single sounds really, really promising. But I would definitely say, in terms of like bands I'm anticipating, Panzerfaust, Anel Nathrak, and I'd probably say Ruins of Beverest. I know Ruins of Beverest are going to bring out another split and hopefully a full length as well. And that, I mean, I've spoken about this many times too, but that Exuvia record by Ruins of Beverest is absolutely fucking incredible. It's to me like apex black metal. There are very, very few albums that can come close to it. Anyway, but let's talk about the concept of this album. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to keep it a mystery or whether you kind of want to talk me through it, but I'd be curious to know, kind of what the story, what the concept, what the idea of it is.
I think really we wanted to write something vaguely Lovecraftian without it being directly Lovecraftian. Just because, I mean, it's a thing that's been done, but I've always really enjoyed his ideas of like big, imperceivable terrors, horrors, things so vast that you can't possibly perceive them with your tiny little human brain, and how seeing something that challenges what you know or think about yourself or anything else can just twist everything else around. And so even the lyrics for this one were written, most of it by me and a couple of songs by Colin, and even he and I have quite different definitions of what we think the album concept actually is after having read through the whole thing.
And so how did that, if you guys sort of created this very abstract concept, did you write it? Did you still write it chronologically? So did you have kind of an order for the songs and then start putting over the lyrics, or did you write lyrics and then piece everything together afterwards?
Yeah, we did chip away at lyrics, but we didn't really assign them and finish it until everything was chronological. And so it's like a really slow descent into madness. And it could almost follow a character if we had written a character for it.
Yeah.
But there's like a very kind of definite like exploration of events and like understanding and kind of or lack of understanding as it just like deteriorates towards the end of the album, where it's just, I don't know, like a level of insanity that's not at all what is, the beginning, the founding, like solid ideas at the beginning of the album.
Yeah. And if there was a character, then by the end, when the Tom Waits song kicks in, it's basically an old man sitting on his porch with a shotgun going, "Get off my lawn."
Almost acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you'd moved to Melbourne because you wanted to get closer to the music industry. So, I mean, outside of Earthrot, what else are you involved in? How do you keep yourself occupied?
So I try and do anything that I can working within the music industry. Anything that makes someone else's crazy ideas of what things should sound or look like out of their head onto a stage is what I want to be a part of. We did a tour in 2018 supporting Dimmu Borgir, and we were like loading a truck at the end of it and just getting like all of our backline and their backline packed away for the next city. And I was bloody exhausted. All I can remember, sweating myself to pieces after way too many beers and loading this up. I'm like, this is a good day. I've had a bloody good day. How can I do this every single day? And obviously the aim would be to do it with Earthrot every day, but if I can't, it's still just as rewarding, just as much fun doing it for someone else with whatever genre of music they're doing, really.
Yeah. And would you want to eventually kind of bring a lot of that stage show and that spectacle to the Earthrot live experience?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things that, I mean, I grew up, watching bands like Rammstein and stuff like that with like gigantic stage production. And I think their like last year's one was the most ridiculous, outlandish metal band stage production I've ever seen.
I was going to talk about that in a second, mate. I saw them in Milton Keynes last year, and it was, I mean, whenever I talk to people about Rammstein as a live band, I'm like, whenever you ask me who's your favorite live band, I would never say Rammstein because I don't think it's fair. It's just one of those things. It's like they're so fucking good live, and what you see is so absorbing and so mind blowing. You cannot compare anybody to them. They make even the most sort of grandiose Iron Maiden show look like fucking puppets on Muppets on Broadway. So
yeah,
it
does.
It's
on ice.
Did you see the show, or did you see any of the shows on their last tour?
No, they haven't brought it to Australia, and I doubt they will. No opportunity for that for me, unfortunately.
Did you see the time lapse video of them building and taking down the stage though?
Yeah.
200 people to build and then 200 people to take down and take to the next venue, which is just fucking insane. But what I did think was super interesting about it too is I know that I don't know whether it was Warner Brothers or I know they had a film studio that they worked with who advised and kind of helped them create the concept of the show.
Sure.
So, like as far as actual production is concerned, I mean, they almost gave it like a cinematic level of production, for a show, which still, weirdly enough, kind of retains a sense of, I mean, even though it's most definitely not, but still retains a sense of spontaneity, which I also think is a tricky thing to do, because I remember seeing Dimmu Borgir years ago, and I felt that was missing. I felt it was kind of too staged.
Right. Yeah. I think I'm with Rammstein. I don't know. It's something else. It's the actual, like the look of that stage build almost looked as they would design like a ride at Universal Studios or something like that. There's a very deliberate kind of depth and space to what they've done with it and where fire comes from. And, even the fire right at the very top of the spire is so far away that you'd have to look up to see it. Like it's so grand, and it's not even particularly practical to see it from that angle, but it just adds to it. And there's really not a lot of bands that can pull that off. I mean, much less financially, but just have it work with the music and the stage show that they've been doing for decades anyway.
Yeah. Well, they had spires literally throughout the venue. So like you would be standing there watching, and then all of a sudden you feel the heat from around you, or sorry, from the side or from the back, and you look around, it's like, fuck, there's fire going up there, there's fire going up there, or they blasting out. They have the song called Puppa, which is when they do it, they bring on this huge pram with this baby, and then Till has a GoPro that he looks at it with, and this demonic child comes on screen, and then at one point the child's mouth opens and it blows out what looks like flies, and then they have these these small little black paper squares that they blow out over the audience, so it like feels like the flies are all around you. Dude, it's just fucking, it's incredible.
It's wild.
It reminds me a bit of you saw Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
Right at the start where Tom Hardy runs out through that tunnel, and he kind of comes out and he's leaning out over this huge sort of precipice where all these people are at the bottom, and then you see these mountains and these weird spires and these faces carved into the mountain and stuff everywhere. The show in a bizarre way reminds me a bit of that. I'd say like the biggest aesthetic influence for me on that show, from my observation, was Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, as in terms of your guys' plans for touring, obviously this COVID-19 scuppered that. But what I guess, what were the original plans? What are the plans once all this bullshit is lifted?
Really, the main things for us are get back to Europe and Japan are probably the like two markets that we really are just like dying to get back to. I mean, US is kind of there, but that's it's for so far it's just been in the too hard basket, like just too difficult to do. The risk of getting visas and not getting them in time and laying out all that money to go anyway. Like there's too many bands and too many friends bands as well that just don't make it and lose a ton of money on a US tour that we've never really bothered to look at it.
Yeah.
As much as it's something we'd love to tick off the list, and reach that. And it's until now it's been just totally off the table. We haven't even looked at it.
Yeah. I have to say, so I mean, I've been living in the UK for nearly 20 years now. And I've qualified eons ago for a British passport, but up until recently have just flatly refused to pay £1,500 for a passport when I don't really travel to the rest of Europe all that much. I've recently had to start traveling for work, but I actually found it easier to get a visa to go to the States than it is to go to Europe. Right. I mean, they hold on to that like Michael Jackson used to hold on to his nuts. It's like, I thought, I mean, the States was generally, fairly easy to get. But have you guys played in Europe before?
Yeah, we did. In 2017, we toured with Gorgoroth and Melakesh.
Yeah.
And 2015, we toured with, actually two Australian bands on Nuclear Blast, Bayard is Murder and Aversion's Crown.
Yeah, yeah. That artist Murder, I'm not as big of a fan of. Melakesh, however, I'm a fucking huge fan of. I know Ashmedi quite well too, and he's been on the show. How fucking intense is that dude on stage?
He is such a wild person to spend a month with in a bus.
Yeah, I can imagine. He did the entire interview, and I had him laying on a sun lounger with a cocktail in his hand, and he just he goes off on these lengthy tangents about people in metal, and when he was in jail, of course it's a crazy shit. But yeah, very 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 cool dude. But I mean, yeah, such a fucking top notch band. And I actually, now that you mentioned, I remember the Melakesh Gorgoroth tour. I'm so fucking pissed now that I missed that. It was one of the things that I did want to go see Melakesh. Gorgoroth without goal for me is not so. It's not something I'm all that interested in. But I would have fucking loved to have seen you guys too. So you said the plan was to come back to Europe?
Yes, yeah, it absolutely was. We'd had a few kind of offers across the table and nothing that we'd signed and kind of committed to yet. And fortunately, we didn't, because we'd have lost a ton of money on flights and backline and things like that. But once everything reopens again, that's probably the primary focus for us, will be getting back to Europe.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder. I'm wondering how much of an impact COVID-19 is going to have on visas and on people being able to move around. Because in my view, I would suspect. I think this for me is the end of globalism. I don't know how much it's going to restrict travel, but I think in terms of outsourcing and stuff like that, I think a lot of countries have suddenly realized if you ship out 80% of your manufacturing to somebody else in a crisis like this, you're pretty fucked.
That's what Australia do with China.
Yeah, well, the US as well. The US had 80%. They rely on China for something like 80% of their pharmaceuticals. And they had a whole bunch of stuff being shipped to them. And apparently, a couple of weeks ago, the Chinese government seized it and said, "Oh no, we prioritize our own people." So it's like, yeah, your problem now. Yeah, I am curious to know how much of an impact it's going to be on people's ability to move, and curious to see. And bands' ability to go touring and stuff as they wish. I hope it doesn't. I mean, stuff like that, I really hope it doesn't affect negatively.
Sure. And I think it may take a bit longer for the international touring to return to the state that it was. I mean, obviously, apart from the European Union, where everything is all, packed in a few hours drive. But I think, for example, Australia will open up domestic borders between the states before international. And so hopefully we can kind of use larger Australian bands to kind of jumpstart the industry again.
Yeah.
That's the way I kind of hope to see it happening. Because with all the international tours getting rescheduled from the first half of this year to, September through May next year, if you're not a gigantic international touring band, you're going to be shit out of luck getting a day where there isn't 1,000 clashes from rescheduled tours, bands doing fresh releases that would be doing their tours around that time anyway. And I think that's one thing that I see. Although it'll offset large bands by 6 to 9 months, I think it'll offset small bands by 12 to 18 months because everything gets shifted, so they'll get pushed out.
Yeah. So I think that's a point, and I think equally, nobody knows when this is going to lift. So to your point earlier, unless you're a big band who's got at least some cash in the bank, I would imagine you're not going to be all that keen to take the risk now of booking a tour and then having to reschedule it again and losing more money.
For sure. Well, for us, if someone said, "Hey, we've got this European tour in September, do you want to commit to it?" I'd say, well, I probably can't to September. I could commit to an Australian tour in September because our costs are so much lower getting around our own country that, I can take a bit of a risk on that. But for us to get to Europe, it's $12,000 or something like that just for flights, just to get in the door. And with the level of uncertainty, although we usually aim for, 4 to 8 months at notice to book a European tour, 4 to 6 months is just nowhere near enough time right now.
Yeah, yeah. So what else are you doing during the downtime to keep yourself occupied? Are you writing new music? As it seems most bands have decided to start doing.
Yes. So I think next year will be a huge year for new releases because everyone's got time to write right now. We were due to start writing around now anyway for our next release. So now I guess we just take the advantage and sit down and spend a little bit of extra time on it. But I think I might be one of the only ones that is completely out of work being music industry employed. So some of the other guys are still able to work, which is cool. So definitely.
And that's and you're okay from a financial perspective, though, I hope.
I'll manage. Yeah, I'll get by. I don't have a lot of.
Are they doing any government support programs over there like they're doing over here?
In the last week, about a bunch of different things for like sole traders, which is a lot of the music industry, subcontracting out, and businesses that have been forced to close. So there's a big package that they've announced to give some support to these kind of businesses, which is hopefully, we'll find out, fingers crossed, will be myself in a few weeks. And then I think they're opening up for about 6 months worth of payment at this stage. So that'll go through.
No, good, man. I hope so. And I thought it was very stand up of Bandcamp as an example to have that I think it was a weekend not too long ago where they weren't taking any royalties off the artists and stuff like that. I mean, I hope you guys got a decent level of support out of that as well.
We did actually. We had a huge amount of sales that weekend, which was fantastic. Saw people buying all sorts of things, and like buying digital downloads on people that I know listen on Spotify predominantly, just because they know it makes a difference.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm going to ask you one last question, then I'm going to let you get out of here. I laughed, just prepping for this interview. I went onto your Facebook page and I laughed at the post where I think it was you that posted this. Remember to listen to tough riffs and get exercise during isolation. Just to remember to listen to tough riffs, but I thought it was fucking hysterical. But very important. Question for you: 5 toughest riffs of all time. Like, what are your go-to training riffs?
Okay. Where's a couple? Job for a Cowboy, Tarnished Gluttony.
Yeah.
It's slow and heavy, and slow is good. Good for reps.
Yeah, definitely.
Super tough. Cannibal Corpse, Scourge of Iron.
Yeah.
Unfathomably heavy, and even heavier live every time I see it. So
aptly named as well.
Absolutely. Let's have a look. What else would be good? Discarnate, their entire last album, with all their might, but Iron Strengthens Iron is just huge. Like, that song puts muscles on top of your muscles.
Yeah.
It really is. What else? I don't know why, but I get a lot of value out of Belphegor when I'm exercising. Bondage Goat Zombie. Okay. It's great. It just like a level of push that just kind of keeps the blood flowing.
Yeah.
And let's pick one more. I'm going to open the playlist, and it'll tell me exactly what's.
You got a training playlist as well.
Oh, I sure do. I got a big one.
I've got my one is called Reps for Satan.
Reps for Satan. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Pathology's Awaken to the Suffering album.
Yeah.
Just disgusting. High production, like everything's squashed. It's just like brick wall compression. It's just catchy, pretty brutal death metal, but there's just something, every riff in it hits harder than anything I've ever heard before. So as much as I normally listen to black metal, it's definitely death metal when I'm working out.
Yeah. I have to say, for me, when I'm working out, it's either death metal or it's hardcore. But I would say, like, on my Reps for Satan playlist, amongst some of the death metal selections, so Internal Bleeding, Focus.
Cool.
That last album of theirs was fucking fantastic. They've always been one of those bands where I've wanted to like them more than I actually like them, and up until that last album came out.
Sure.
What else do I have on? Yeah. I listen to a lot of Crowbar when I'm working out.
Cool.
Because I think you need to embrace the inner misery that you have on top of the badassness. So December Spawn by Crowbar. I think that's absolutely awesome. One of the toughest songs ever, and also one of the most underrated songs in their back catalog, Expendable Youth by Slayer.
Nice.
I mean, just like Tom is one of the few guys that'll be able to make a lyric as cheesy as death the only solution. And it's fucking awesome as he does.
Hey, when you're you can write what you want.
Oh yeah. Hardest song of all time, potentially. Wrong One to Fuck With by Dying Fetus.
Oh my God, Subjected to a Beating. How did I not go straight for Dying Fetus? What an idiot.
One of my other favorites by Dying Fetus, From Womb to Waste.
Yeah.
That right after that sample, though, you know, when the woman goes, "Fuck the baby, let it die," the
riff's too tough. It's huge.
Yeah, fucking awesome. Yeah. Oh, and then I know we were talking about thrash earlier, but Power Trip, they did one of their earlier songs, Armageddon Blues. Like, if you want to hear a masterclass in fucking vocal phrasing and putting rhythm in your voice, that song is unfucking believable.
I actually have one thrash album on my exercise playlist.
And what is that?
Municipal Waste, Slime and Punishment.
Oh, great!
The production, Jesus Christ, have you? It hits heavy.
Yeah, have you seen them live?
I have, yeah.
Holy Jesus, they're good live.
Yeah.
I saw them last year on the I think the East Pack Resistance tour. Fuck, they blew me away. I was not expecting to be as impressed as I ended up being. They were like, it reminded me a little bit of when I saw Baez at the first time. Oh, another very underrated song, but I think an underrated album and an underrated song, "Demonic Refusal" by Testament. That's when Chuck Billy was still doing death metal. He also is, as much as he's not seen as a death metal vocalist, he's one of my favorite death metal vocalists. I love his voice. I think his singing is fucking excellent, but his growl, like his death growl, is awesome as well. And then you can, if you want hard shit, the entire Pierced from Within album by Suffocation, from start to finish, you know, again, in terms of lyrics, anyone that sings "human life means little to me," that's like a fucking shot of steroids when you're working out. But listen, dude, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Like I said, I would only ever bring people on the show whose music I enjoy. I thoroughly enjoy talking to you. I think Black Tides of Obscurity is killer, and I'm hoping in less than 12 months' time we'll see you around the UK.
Hopefully, man. That'd be brilliant. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the chats.
My pleasure, man. And if I ever come up to Melbourne for the Melbourne Hi-Fi show, I'll look you up.
Hit us up.
All right, dude. Take care of yourself.
Cheers, mate.
Bye-bye.
From the vantage of eternity, everything in our world has already happened. In eternity's eyes, you have already lived and died. Birth. Life. Death.
Thank you so much to Jared once again for coming on the show, jumping on the Zoom machine all the way from Australia. Like I said, and if it was not made clear enough in the intro of the show, Black Tides of Obscurity is one of my favorite records of 2020 so far. And if you have not listened to it yet, I'm going to start to question your cult credentials. Right, on to another band where at least one half of the band's membership is from Australia as well. Omega Infinity just put out a record on Season of Mist called Solar Spectre. And for those of you guys that don't know who Omega Infinity are, they are a two-man group combining the talents of Zenoyer, who's the vocalist for an Australian band called Ne Obliviscaris, and then also Tentacle P, who does all instruments aside from vocals, and he is of the German band called Todgelichter, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly. But Omega Infinity, as the name suggests, does sci-fi tinged blackened death metal. I would say if I had to describe them in relative to other bands, I'd say you'll hear strains of Emperor, Bloodhouse Nort, Dark Space, Killing Joke, and actually, ironically enough, they do a cover of Killing Joke, Hosanna's in the base or from the Basements of Hell at the end of the album. Yeah, I mean, this is a record that really, in my view, at its core, in its beating heart, is just pure violence. A lot of the songs are fast, and then they kind of fall into these cosmic sci-fi type atmospheric bits, but they never do it for so long that it becomes redundant or boring. And it is just an incredibly well-made record. I did try and get these guys on the show, but unfortunately, they apparently do not do interviews. Which is a shame, because I think it'd be fun to talk to them. But in the meantime, I mean, for me, Solar Spectre is just another example of Season of Mist hitting it out of the park with just about every release they've put out this year so far. And as a matter of fact, I was thinking earlier, I may have to do a top 20 Season of Mist records and a top 20 other, because these guys have been on such a tear that it's very likely that at least half of my fucking year-end best is going to come from that label. But anyway, highly recommended, as you probably could guess. I'm going to play one of my favorite tracks off the album. This is called Jupiter. That was Jupiter by Omega Infinity off the fucking spectacular record, Solar Spectre. Came out on my birthday, so you know it's good. And it is out now on Season of Mist, so check it out. It's, again, like I said, fucking fantastic. And if that song didn't convince you, then you are listening to the wrong podcast, my friend. Up next, Stellar Master Elite, their new EP, Hologram Temple Ominous. As the name suggests, it is kind of an epilogue to the Hologram Temple record that they put out in 2019, last year. Also, incidentally, my favorite record of 2019. It even beat out Demon by Mayhem, so that gives you an idea of how much I enjoyed it, considering how much I carry on about Mayhem. But yeah, I mean, I, as an epilogue to that record, I think this works really, really well. And all three of the tracks kind of have this foreboding sense of what might come next. There are two songs with vocals, the first being A New Galactic Empire, the second being Mask, and then there's an instrumental at the end called Exposing the Threat, or the Lurking Threat of Layer X. And if you don't know Stellar Master Elite, obviously, if you listen to the show, we use their music as an intro and outro. But if you've not spent a significant amount of time with their stuff, I'd say particularly on Hologram Temple, they're kind of the crossroads between Red Harvest, Satyricon, and probably Ruins of Beverast. So very, very densely atmospheric, very heavily layered, kind of doomy black metal with and I know I used this phrase with Omega Infinity, but with kind of a sci-fi edge. And it's just something that they do incredibly well. This EP, once again, leads me to question the sanity of many, many labels who just for some reason are not picking this band up. Like if you listen to any of their 4 albums, they brought out their first one in 2011. That's fucking brilliant. Stellar Master Elite 2, Destructive Interference Generator, came out in 2013. Also fucking brilliant. Number 3, Eternalism, the Psychospherical Chapter, came out in 2015, and unsurprisingly, also fucking excellent. And considering the amount of fucking bullshit that labels generally put out, it's mind-boggling to me that this band is not signed. And I'm not just saying that because Marco has become a friend of mine. I thought that back when I heard the record. The reason I actually ended up talking to him in the first place is because how much I liked Hologram Temple. But anyways, Hologram Temple Ominous is available right now on Bandcamp. So if the labels don't want to support these guys, then make sure that you do. I think that Black Metal Promotion gave them a push, and apparently the response when they put this out this past Friday was really positive as well. So I am very, very pleased for them to hear that, and I'm really looking forward to the next Stellar Master Elite full length. And like I said, I think this EP sets the scene for that happening really, really well. This is the first track off of Hologram Temple Ominous. It is called A New Galactic Empire. That was a New Galactic Empire by Stellar Master Elite, off of their Bandcamp EP, Hologram Temple Ominous. Check it out. Show these guys some love and support. They've got some cool merchandise on there as well. And you can also get all 4 of their other records on Bandcamp. And again, kudos to Bandcamp, because if it were not for them, bands like Stellar Master Elite would not have the platform that they have. So, I hope that at some point the labels are going to wake up, because, like I said, it really is a fucking spectacular band, and it is an absolute disgrace that they are not signed yet. All right, let's read some news. So we'll start off with Metal Storm. Let me share my screen, and we'll get cracking. Right. Diabolus in Musica present One Step Higher acoustic version. Why would you name your band after the worst fucking title for a Slayer record ever? And it's such a stupid juvenile title as well. I really think that after Divine Intervention, it was like Kerry King decided he was going to try and come up with the most childish, moronic fucking album title that he possibly could. I mean, Repentless, God Hates Us All, Christ Illusion. It just sounds so fucking stupid. And I like Slayer. Jesus, I've got a Slayer t-shirt on, but it's just sad to me when I listen to something like Rain and Blood and South of Heaven and Seasons in the Abyss. And again, even Divine Intervention, as to how fucking far that band fell after those heady days. What else is going on here? Abigail Williams recording, upcoming full-length release. I have never really been a fan of Abigail Williams, and I don't know why, because I know a lot of people like them very much. But they've just never, ever caught my attention. And like I said, I've got no idea why. Who knows? Maybe this new album will change my mind. But I'm still undecided on that band. Bremelin to released first album in 20 years. Bremelin was a pretty big band actually in my friendship circle. And we're talking probably like 20, 25 years ago, back in South Africa. A lot of my friends were really into them. I was not so much. But this track on here, Full Gore Whore, that they've published on YouTube is fucking excellent, and it's a great indication of the direction that they've taken with this new record. I think, if you're an Bremelin fan, you're going to like what you hear, but I think if you weren't, it's kind of like the last Internal Bleeding record. It'll probably get them quite a few new fans. It's just sort of chugging, groovy, fucking badass death metal that's very, very, very old school, but with a real modern sheen. A lot of catchy stuff, and just it's kind of a throwback without sounding like an intentional throwback. I don't know whether that makes any sense, but anyway, Bremelin, the album is going to be called Never Enough Snuff, which is a fucking awesome title for a record. It's going to be coming out in May, I believe, May or June. So check it out. Hellfest 2020 cancelled. And most festivals are being cancelled this year. And I saw another article which we might actually stumble across in a minute, where one guy was saying that live concerts probably won't kick off again until 2021. And as Jared and I were talking as well, I think the interesting thing there is going to be there's going to be such a backlog of people wanting to get on the road and tour. It'll be interesting to see how kind of it all pans out, how many bands are delayed, because obviously promoters are going to book what they think they're going to make the most money with. So it might be a good thing because you might see really stacked bills and really exciting lineups, or it might be quite shit for smaller bands. But anyway, because everybody is so sad and fucking morose over the cancellation of live shows, including me. Next week, I am going to be having on the show with me a really good mate of mine named Lo Reichert. He used to be in a band here in the UK called Copperhead. Not exactly black or death metal, but I used to jump on stage with him to do the last song of their set every time that they played live in London, at least. And the other day, I was digging through some old hard drives of mine. And I happened to find some fairly decent quality video footage of me on stage with them at the Scala here in London. So Lawrence and I are basically going to talk about all of our favorite live shows we've ever been to. And we are going to. I'm going to be releasing some of our archive footage from those Copperhead shows to the public. So it's going to be a fun, probably a slightly different episode to what we normally do. But do check it out. Episode number 30 coming next week. Uada, third studio record near completion. Very excited about that. Uada is kind of like. Could we say that the US equivalent of Mugwa? Maybe. I personally think they're fucking brilliant, and I thought Cult of a Dying Sun, that came out in 2018, was absolutely fucking fantastic. So let's see what this new record brings. And again, man, so many cool things coming out this year. Anel Nathrak, Paradise Lost, Uada now that's been added to it as well. I can't think off the top of my head, but I know normally when I'm not recording this, I can name about 20 different fucking things coming out this year that I want to hear. There's a new Ruins of Everest split as well that's on its way. Black Funeral announced new album. I listened to this and I didn't like it. Normally the stuff on Iron Bonehead is pretty good, but I thought that Black Funeral record, that Black Funeral single sounded like a fucking pile of shit. What else is here? Wadruna album release postponed to 2021. Quite a lot of bands are doing that, which again, I'm going to be curious to see what the release lineup looks like next year, because I think a lot of bands have had issues with some of the pressing plants, and so they've been postponing their records until next year. Hypocrisy, Peter Tägtgren recording vocals for new album. Hypocrisy haven't really made anything decent, in my opinion, probably since the self-titled record that came out in, I think that was 1990. I'll probably speak under correction here, but 1998. And that was a fucking great album. But after that, it's sort of just all, I don't know. It's like I've said with a lot of bands that a lot of people love, it just lacks menace. But who knows? Maybe singing about abortions with Till from Rammstein has given him the taste for death metal once again. Let's move on to Blabbermouth. So first article here, Randy Blythe, how Jamie Jaster and Chuck Billy ended up guesting on new Lamb of God album. Like I said last week, I was very pleasantly surprised by Memento Mori, that single that Lamb of God put out. I'm really excited about this album, and hearing that Chuck Billy is going to be on the record makes me even more excited. I'm less excited about hearing Randy talk about politics, and I'm even less excited about Jamie from Hatebreed talking about politics. Jamie's a nice guy, but there was a whole big furor about some fucking stupid Twitter post that he put up about Biden and Trump, and it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, why do you even pay attention to a guy who clearly has watched about 3 minutes of CNN in the last month? He's a great musician, cool dude. I like his podcast very much, but as far as politics is concerned, I've no fucking interest in hearing what he has to say. I've no interest in hearing what most musicians have to say about politics. Megadeth's David Ellefson performs acoustic version of Simple Truth. Such a cool dude, David Ellefson. He, if you think about the circles that he's moved in and the amount of fucking shit that people have dug up on Dave Mustaine, or stories they've told about him, and stories I've told about most people in that kind of big four, I don't think I can recall a single person who has ever had a bad word to say about David Ellefson. I don't even think during the drug years. I think he was probably one of the. I mean, I don't know whether he was a drug addict, but even if he was probably one of the nicest drug addicts alive. But yeah, like I said, I've yet to hear a single bad word said about him. Guns N' Roses, Axl Rose slams Rand Paul for attacking Kentucky's COVID-19 restrictions. Again, another dude that needs to focus on music and shut the fuck up. And I know Guns N' Roses isn't exactly subject matter for this podcast, but it is my podcast. So I can talk about what I want. I hear that, or I have heard rumors that Duff, Slash, and Axl are working on new music. Now, I am not particularly excited about that. As much as I love Appetite for Destruction and Use Your Illusion 1 or 2, and I grew up with those records. The reason I'm not excited about it is this. Number one is if Izzy Stradlin is not going to be on a Guns N' Roses record, then I don't want to listen to it. Izzy to me is like Zamoth was to Emperor. He's kind of this force that just provides a backbone to the band. And I mean, if you listen to so many of the cool Guns N' Roses songs from way back when, Pretty Tied Up, if you listen to Izzy's rhythm playing, it's just so fucking cool, and it just works so well with what Slash was doing. And I just think those two guys complement each other very well. So without him in the band, I've got no interest. And then the other thing, and I know this will be controversial when I say it, but it's the truth. Unfortunately, I don't see how these guys could put together another decent record if they were not all addicted to drugs. I think it took all the chaos and the craziness, and I've said this many times before, I've never even smoked a cigarette, so I'm not into drugs in any way, shape, or form. I don't give a fuck what people do with their time and with their in their private lives, but I myself am not into it, and I don't partake. But these guys, the reason why their music sounded so great was because there was so much chaos and craziness and shit like that coming up. I mean, like I found a head and an arm in a garbage can on Double Talking Jive. That's from an actual story. They actually found a corpse near the studio where they were recording Use Your Illusion. So I genuinely think a band like that needs they need the chaos and the craziness around them to be cool. But who knows? I might be surprised. Glenn Danzig says Misfits have talked about recording something new. That'll be interesting. That's also probably the three of them having a look at their pension funds after COVID-19 and going, Jesus Christ, our portfolios took quite a knock. And none of us fancy working in Target when we're 75. So time for us to record a new album, I think. Funny how some cash money will help you put your differences aside, because there was a time when Jerry Only and when Doyle and maybe not Doyle so much, but Glenn and Jerry for sure were never going to talk to each other ever again. I tell you what, though, I would have fucking loved to have seen those Misfits reunion shows. I did see the set list, and it was all the hits. I was always more a deep cut fan. I mean, my favorite Misfits song ever is a song called Comeback, which is off Static Age. I really like that kind of almost rockabilly influence that Static Age had. Probably more so than I guess the more traditional punk stuff. But yeah, like I said, it'd be interesting to see what they do. I heard one of Glenn's Elvis covers as well, and it wasn't too bad. It sounds like it should come off a movie, and presumably a movie that's a lot better than than Verotica. I had one dude actually send me a link to that fucking pile of shit on Twitter, and I could bear about 15 minutes of it. I mean, it is so unbelievably abysmally shit. There are fucking episodes on Brazzers that have more coherent plots than that piece of crap. Suicide Silence, Mark Hellman on possibility of Slayer reunion tour. I don't think it'll happen, says the fucking foremost authority on Slayer. I have to tell you, I think I'm going to be more surprised if it doesn't happen than if it does. I know that there's talk at the moment of Kerry doing a project basically with all of current day Slayer, excluding Tom, and with Phil Anselmo on vocals. That could be quite interesting. I could see them going on tour and doing probably doing like maybe a 40-minute set of new material and then a 45-minute encore where they do a couple of Slayer and a couple of Pantera hits. Whether they'll call themselves Slantera or Player, I don't know. But I think if Phil can, if he can kind of go back to the vocal style that he had on Mouthful War, which I don't know whether that's possible for him anymore or not. But I reckon he could do a pretty good job of stuff like Angel of Death or War Ensemble. If he just does that fucking scream that he does on like the Metal Alliance shows, that's just going to be terrible. In which case, I would prefer he stick to stuff like N minor, which I've said it before. It's his acoustic project. Their debut is coming out on Season of Mist, I think, in June, and I fucking cannot wait. But again, yeah, I would rather him stick to that than do heavy stuff if that's going to be the case. Although Scour, his black metal band, is very good. But anyway, let's see what happens. Doesn't look like there's a whole lot else on here that's worth reading. King Diamond on upcoming reissues. We're trying to go back to the absolute original stuff. Yeah, well, I do like King Diamond. I saw King Diamond live. I'll probably talk about this on next week's episode. I saw him live about 4 or 5 years ago. My friend Alec bought me a ticket to go and watch it with him for my birthday, and fucking hell, so unbelievably good. It's one of those shows where I still get goosebumps whenever I think about it. By the way, I don't know whether you guys are seeing any of this on Facebook, but I have to just comment on the word challenge and how far humanity has apparently lowered the bar now for what is considered a challenge and what is considered just being a fucking asshole and an idiot. It used to be 20 years ago. If somebody said, I feel like doing something different in my life, I'm going to challenge myself. So I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm going to run a marathon, or I'm going to do a triathlon. Nowadays, it's the egg swallowing challenge. Fucking idiots swallowing raw eggs and chasing it with a shot of vodka. That's apparently a challenge. Or the selfie challenge. Apparently holding a phone up straight is now a challenge. The other thing that I saw the other day that I thought was absolutely ridiculous, the suicide awareness challenge. Basically, these morose, low testosterone looking fucking dipshits taking photos of themselves going, blah, blah, blah. I'm taking a selfie of myself, just me, so that I can raise awareness of the fact that men commit suicide. Holy shit, what a shock. Really? Men commit suicide? It's like, I tell you what, if women saw those photos and they saw that as the future fathers of their fucking offspring, they'll probably you'll probably even up the numbers. Women will start killing themselves off in fucking record numbers. No, seriously, man, stop with the fucking challenges. If you want to challenge yourself, do something that's actually challenging. A fucking selfie is not challenging. Steel Panther's satchel. Even if I catch the coronavirus, I'm not afraid of it. I don't know sometimes whether these dudes have like marked out for their own gimmick, whether they really are like this or whether it's just like one massive comedy ruse. But they are fucking funny. Every time I've seen an interview with them, they're hysterical. And you know what? I'll just come out and say this right now. I love the fact that they get under the skin of fucking morons like Grim Kim. I think I've mentioned this before. Kim Kelly is this complete and utter buffoon who was on Metal Sucks when they still had Chuck and Godless as their hosts for the Metal Sucks podcast. And they went on for fucking, must have been about a half an hour, about how they can't believe that in this day and age, sexist garbage like Steel Panther can still be tolerated. It's like, you guys don't get the fact that this is a comedy band and this is a joke. And this is from the same person who supposedly listens to all sorts of grim, black, highly offensive black metal, but yet Steel Panther irks her to such a point that she has to sob and fucking whine about it for nearly a half an hour. And then Godless, who is one of the biggest pricks. I mean, he is such a dick. I think more often than not, when I used to listen to that podcast, I would switch off just because he would get on one, ironically, as I'm getting on one now. And it would just be so insipid and pathetic and just like genuinely like almost tailored to the far left set that he was trying to court. And yeah, like I said, him and Grim Kim together was like a coming together of fucking dickheads. Vinnie Paul's long-awaited cookbook to receive posthumous release. I still need to do my metal barbecue video at some point. I actually had me another very, very good barbecue this weekend. I did some ribs. If I get to it, I'll ask my girlfriend to record it so you guys can see how to make some real ribs too. Like I said, if you're a vegan, get lost. Right, guys, I think that is just about it for me for this week. I didn't get to Invisible Oranges, but what I will say is this. InvisibleOranges.com is one of, if not the best metal websites on the planet. I absolutely live by their upcoming releases list. those dudes go seriously deep, and I always discover really cool stuff when I check out what they share every Friday. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Thank you once again to Jared for coming on and doing the interview. Like I said, next week, I've got my buddy Lo Reichert on the show with me, and we're going to do a breakdown of our favorite memories of going to live shows. We attended many together while he was still living here before he moved back to South Africa. So, if we can't go to live shows, we can at the very least reminisce about live shows. In the meantime, I hope that every one of you guys are keeping healthy, keeping well, keeping safe and sound. And from the mean streets of Surbiton on the outskirts of London, I'm bidding you all a fond farewell.